Welcome once again to Cinemaholics, where we talk about the biggest and best films coming to theaters and streaming online from San Francisco, or the San Francisco Bay Area, to be honest. I'm John Negroni, film editor for theyoungfolks.com. From Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he is a freelance writer. You've seen his work on Slant Magazine, Cinema Blend, The Playlist, and Handsome Young Man Weekly. It's Will Ashton.
There you go. That's a that's a
like
first that's the first time I've ever heard that before. That's very sweet.
Maybe from me. I'm sure you get it all the time from the ladies.
I don't know.
Well, hey, speaking of Slant Magazine, Will Ashton, you recently put something up on that website, right?
I mean, I didn't put it up there. I wrote something for them, and they published it. I just got my first review for Slant Magazine. It's for Station 11, the HBO Max series.
Station 11? What's that?
It's an adaptation of a very long and very popular book, and it's now going to be a streaming series with a bunch of people in it. So, yeah.
What streaming service?
HBO Max.
Ooh, I have that.
Mm-hmm.
I could check it out right now. Or
yeah.
wait, when does it come out?
It will be available when this episode is live, so it should be out now. So you can,
nice.
Yeah, check it out.
All right, we'll definitely check that out. And I had something else to ask you, but I totally forgot. I was gonna. That's my fault. Well, I was gonna mention that we're only talking about West Side Story today, and we already kind of teed this up when we did our Don't Look Up review. We warned the listeners. We were like, yeah, you're probably expecting a big old main episode. You're expecting reviews left and right.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff is coming out. But no, we're kind of doing a piecemeal approach because of scheduling. It's the holidays and all of that. So we're just going to talk about the new West Side Story movie in this episode of the show. And hey, maybe we'll come back at you with some more bonus content if we can.
Sure.
Later this week. So no promises, but definitely a half-hearted guarantee. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking before we recorded. You basically have seen all the heavy hitters for the rest of December and 2021 by extension.
In terms of wide releases,
yes.
I think like the biggest movie I have not seen is Being the Ricardos.
Yes,
I have not seen Being the Ricardos. You have, which is a bummer. I was expecting to see it this past week. Just had like an technical issue with like seeing the screener.
Oh, really?
So I don't have the screener, and I don't really have time to actually like go to a showing. So you know. Just haven't seen it. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, saving the best for last.
yeah. I'm going to end 2021 on quite a note. That's for sure.
A lot of high
note.
Yeah. We know at least a couple people who were really fond of that film, so I'm not going to disparage their opinions. But
we do. I'll shout them out. My editor at Awards Watch. When we were coming out of Nightmare Alley, he was just like, "You don't understand, John. Being the Ricardos, game changer." I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was along those lines. He was super enthusiastic about it, but I think it's not the consensus opinion. So who knows?
Maybe we can get him on the show to discuss why he liked the movie so much, because I'm genuinely really curious to know why.
I've always wanted to invite him, but it's got to be for like it's got to be the right movie. So yeah, I doubt he's listening, but I'll send him a clip of this.
Being the Cinemaholics. There you go.
You can find more episodes of Cinemaholics, including our full archive on cinemaholics.com. You'll also find written reviews, including our written review of Spider-Man No Way Home. That's right. I watched the movie. I reviewed it. It is on cinemaholics.com. We also have video reviews on there, too. A lot of the movies we've been talking about, we've been putting out written reviews. We've been pretty diligent about that. By we, I mean me, because mainly, you've been helping me out with the young folks.
I guess, yeah.
You've been writing for that outlet, which is great because I mean I already told you I was looking at the analytics and your stuff's killing it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was actually just moments ago writing my Journal for Jordan review, which I'll hopefully send to you in a short while. So I got more stuff cooking. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's actually another wide release I didn't see. I didn't go to my screening for that, so I haven't seen it. I haven't seen everything. But what's your one sentence? Should I brave the world to see Journal for Jordan, or do you think it's a Being the Ricardo situation where I'm probably all right?
I really honestly don't know if I'm embargoed for Journal for Jordan, so I guess I can tell you my opinion off the air. But I would not risk your health to see Being the Ricardos. I wouldn't risk your health,
which
for
I feel
any
like
movie.
You would say that about a lot of movies because you're a stand-up person,
right? I was gonna say I wouldn't risk. I wouldn't advise people risk their health to see a movie, but I would say certainly not Being the Ricardos, which is going to be on Amazon Prime in a matter of days. So yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know it was gonna. I thought it was like next month, so I'm actually feeling pretty all right about not seeing it at the screening. But yeah, so like I said, you can find all kinds of stuff on cinemaholics.com, including our merch page. Don't forget, you can find, so we have new merch on the site, our new logo and everything. We sold some stuff. It's great. But we also have our classic stuff. We sold a little bit of some classic stuff this past week, including the classic logo on the hoodie. We know you all want to stay warm. That's what I assumed when I saw that sale go through. I was like, okay, this person, they need to bundle up. They need to wear layers. And the only way to layer up while also being a high-tier supporter of Cinemaholics, the podcast, is, of course, by getting the Cinemaholics hoodie and t-shirt. Because once you take off that hoodie, people are going to be like, bet what he's got under there is nowhere near as impressive as that hoodie. Guess again. The joke's on them. They're going to see that Cinemaholics shirt, the new Cinemaholics shirt that's taken movie theaters everywhere by storm. So definitely check that out on cinemaholics.com.
I'm not sure.
Of course.
I'm not sure if I want to dive into the reasons why they're removing all these clothings, but
well,
that's pretty
it's
imagination.
Such a warm hoodie, Will Ashton. They've come in, they were bundled up. They're like, okay, I'm good. I'm actually wearing. It's so funny because I'm saying this. I'm literally wearing the classic hoodie right now.
Nice, yeah.
That's how it works.
I was actually laying out my Cinemaholic shirt to wear tomorrow for a podcast I'm going to be a guest on. So, yeah,
love it.
Repping the merch. There we go.
And that's the classic one, right?
Oh yeah, you better believe it, man.
Yeah. You know the classics left and right. What color is your classic one? I actually forgot.
Black.
Is it the black? Okay. Yeah. I know the gray one is probably the most popular, but
is it?
What do I know?
I like the black one. Not that this is a gray one. I mean, anything you want to buy from the Cinemaholics merch page is fine with me.
Yeah. We're not complaining.
But I like the black one personally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing the black hoodie right now, but the blue hoodie is where it's at for the classic one. But anyway,
yeah.
If you'd like to hit us up, our email is cinemaholicspodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Mm-hmm. And as always, if you want to become one of our super supporters, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/cinemaholics. And links to everything I just mentioned, they're all in the show notes below. So check that out.
Nice. And to double back, it is December 21st is when Being the Ricardos is on Amazon Prime.
Love it. See, it's like 6 days from now. I just don't think I need to go see it. I could just wait. See it on Amazon Prime. Why not? It doesn't seem like a big screened adventure movie to me.
You say that, but the screening I went to was surprisingly kind of full. I don't know why, but there were a bunch of people at the screening I went to, an uncomfortable amount, I think, at Being the Ricardos, for me, at my screening at least.
I'm pretty fortunate because I haven't really been going to public screenings, just because I want to avoid that. But the nice thing is when I have gone on very, very rare occasion, the theaters have been empty basically. So that tells you that. All right, let's get into our main review for the week. And it's coming a bit later, so we apologize for that because we already talked about Don't Look Up and we kind of split things up. But let's get into one of the biggest movies I was going to say it's one of the biggest movies of the year, but the box office has not reflected that description. West Side Story.
It's one of the biggest award season movies, to be sure.
Yes, that's true. Well, in terms of budget, at least. But yeah, so let's talk about West Side Story, but this is Spielberg's version.
Tonight, the world is full of light. This is my first time in New York City. I want to be happy here. I want to make a life, a home.
Are you ready? Tonight is about family. The first gringo boy who smiles at you.
I never seen you before. You're not Puerto Rican.
Is that okay?
Do you want to start World War III?
You know, I wake up to everything I know either getting sold or wrecked or being taken over by people that I don't like.
You keep away from him as long as you're in my house.
I'm a grown-up now, Bernardo. I'm gonna think for myself.
Tony, we need you if we're going to war. Who are you? Friend or foe?
So West Side Story, as I mentioned, $100 million budget. Big budget, big movie. It's the big remake to the 1961 Best Picture winner.
Mm-hmm.
That film, which, directed by Robert Wise and co-directed by Jerome Robbins, who did the cinematography. Although famously, Robbins got fired, I think.
Oh, yeah?
I was reading, I think I told you, I was reading up on some of that stuff. And just kind of getting a little bit of like some context for what people thought of the 1961 film at the time. And a lot of people around that time really liked the movie, but, there was certainly this like feeling of like people giving the film a lot of points for all the effort of the choreography, but kind of reflecting on how the actors themselves were really run roughshod, I guess, to pull off the choreography in the original West Side Story. You can kind of tell when you watch that movie, they're not giving it 50%.
Right. Well, you didn't see the Rita Moreno documentary from earlier this year, right?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, they talk about it a little bit. Yeah, it was a pretty intensive process, to be sure.
Hey, and you see it on the screen. I mean, that chain link fencing in the original is undeniable. I think we both rewatched the original, right? Earlier this month.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Anticipation.
Yeah. Earlier this week, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was like early last week. For me, that was probably I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen the original West Side Story, but in terms of like, and let's get into it.
Yes.
The original film was like on a bunch when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It's one of my sister's favorite films. And as for listeners who don't know, I am Puerto Rican, and it's a rare thing for Puerto Ricans to have like movies about us or have us in them. Like it just doesn't happen very often. Usually if you have like you have Puerto Rican actors and all that, and you have like some stories that like every once in a while we'll get something like Nothing Like the Holidays where you have some Puerto Ricans in the cast. I think that one even had non-Puerto Ricans, but usually like the Latin American, Latina, actor or movies that we get tend to be like Mexico or, sometimes you get Cuban, and it's like there's a lot of countries. So, I understand, but this was like even more than In the Heights for sure. This movie in particular, this new West Side Story is very Puerto Rican. There's a lot of Puerto Rican stuff going on here. So in our household, it was playing all the time, but I didn't actually watch the whole thing, like really like sat down and watched it as an adult until college. And that really was out of curiosity because I remember, I think around that time, Les Mis was coming out. And I remember, I wasn't like a theater kind of person. Like I was in plays and stuff, and I did like some musicals, but I wasn't like, as obsessed, I guess, or I wasn't like in that world. Like I had a foot in that world, I guess. Right.
Sure.
And I remember there being lots of debate between like, should there be a West Side Story movie? This was still a few years, I think, before they were even like talking to Spielberg about making, I think around like 2014 or whatever. But around the time that Les Mis was like coming out, and people were like, we can get these big movies, like Rent, I think was around this time when we were talking about that. And everyone was saying, where's the West Side Story remake? Because it's been 60 years to this day since, why haven't they remade West Side Story? And I'm sure we'll have some thoughts on that. But what's your baggage on West Side Story?
I mean, I didn't hear as many people talking about remaking it. If anything, I heard a lot of people being like, oh, why are they remaking it? But I think to your point, like it's a film that I personally consider it one of the greatest movie musicals ever made. I'd put it up there with like Singing in the Rain, Little Shop of Horrors, Hedwig and the Angry Inch is like one of my all-time favorite movie musicals by far. I think it's a fantastic film, and every time I watch it, I'm surprised that I only grow to like it more. I don't know if you feel the same way, but
I do not.
You don't. You're not a big fan, or you just don't feel as strongly.
I'm a fan. I am a fan of the original West Side Story, but it is not a film I fully love.
It has.
I just can't.
Issues, which I mean, understandably so, and that's, I mean, certainly in terms of Puerto Rican representation, I think that was one of the biggest reasons that it was due for a remake. But at the same time, it's one of those movies where it's like, how do you top it? Like, how do you, in terms of, like you said, the dance choreography, the musicality of it, how do you make it better than what it was already? And I mean, it wasn't really inspiring a lot of confidence from the trailer, to be sure. I know the promotional materials.
Yeah, I was not looking forward to this. I was dreading this movie.
But I mean, it's not terribly shocking that it's doing well critically, at least, because it's Steven Spielberg. And, I mean, even though the guy hasn't made an outright musical, there is a musicality to his other films. There's, very tight framing, choreography in a way that there is a sense of like, okay, yeah, it's like, it's a given that he should have made a musical at some point. It's
the opening of Temple of Doom feels like it's about to teeter into,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's, one of the biggest examples for sure. And, in his career, he hasn't shied away from remaking a lot of his favorite films, like A Guy Named Joe. I think he remade into Always, and then War of the Worlds, obviously, in 2005. And I think I saw on the list of his favorite films that West Side Story was in his like top 20 or so. So,
yeah, I was talking about that with Isaac Feldberg on a Twitter space. We were discussing, or we were kind of like speculating, was this a movie we think that Spielberg kind of grew up on? And I think we kind of like, I think we like fact checked it, and that appears to be the case, because that movie came out in 1961. Spielberg directed his first film, Duel, right? Like in the mid 70s, so right before Jaws.
Sure.
So like 15 years beforehand. I think he was like college age when he made that movie. So this guy was like a kid when West Side Story came out. It totally makes sense that it would be like a heavy influence on him as a filmmaker.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, throughout his career, like I said, he tends to try to recapture that Spielberg magic for a lot of the films that he loves as a way of like giving that back to a new generation of movie-going fans. Obviously, that's had mixed results. I haven't seen Always, but I've heard it's one of his weaker films.
I haven't seen it either.
But I really do like his War of the Worlds. I don't know where you stand on that one. I think it's even sort of
movie.
Underrated.
Good big screen movie. I don't think it's like people are giving it an unfair shake, like the ones who dismiss it. I think it's worth dismissing on some levels.
Oh,
but
really?
I think that it's kind of really like one-dimensional as a movie. Like it tries to have these loftier, human condition insights that I don't think are very profound. I find a lot of like what happens in the second half of the movie very forgettable. Whereas like the first half of War of the Worlds, I think is like really thrilling and really tight filmmaking, incredible set pieces and all of that. But as I read the book, and I think the book has a much better interpretation, or the way that it executes probably the most important scene in the book and the movie, involving the person who's kind of at their last rope that he encounters. I just don't think the movie really got that in a very fulfilling way, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it in full, but I would agree that the first half is stronger than the second. I think it's hard to top that opening action sequence, just in terms of, I imagine that was the main reason why Spielberg wanted to remake it, especially coming off of the tragedy of 9/11. But
and when he saw Tom Cruise run for the first time, he was like, by God, this is it.
I mean, that's like one of the pinnacle Tom Cruise running movies, right? Outside of the Mission Impossible movies. Yeah.
I think Mission Impossible 3 was around this time too. That was like 2006. So War of the Worlds was right before that.
Right.
And I just remember like both of those movies back to back were they featured Tom Cruise sprinting in his very Tom Cruise way quite prominently.
If he wasn't jumping on couches, he was just sprinting on the big screen. That's basically what he was doing in the 2000s. Yeah.
What a time for him to be alive. But no, like I said before, like I kind of avoid rewatching West Side Story for that reason, because the older I get, the more and more that I just can't get over my issues with it. And it's really frustrating, and it always puts me in a bad mood, because like there's so many things about the musical in general that I love.
Sure.
Like the music in West Side Story, where I can absolutely agree with you is that it's easily one of the all-time greatest musical like compositions and albums of all time.
Absolutely, yes.
Like it's in the top 2 or 3 easily.
Yes.
And that's why it bums me out, because I watch this movie, and this kind of translates to the modern remake as well. When I watch it, it's just like I want it to leave me in a better place when it ends.
That's fair.
And we should probably preface with this, like, it's a very old musical. I think we are going to hint at some things that happen in the musical where we're not going to be super precious about reveals or anything. Like we won't say like big spoilers, but
let's put it this way: the musical was basically a not very loose readaptation of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. So
absolutely,
you can kind of, if you know Romeo and Juliet, you kind of know the story of West Side Story.
It's not exactly like we're not giving anything really specific away there. It's not slavish to Romeo and Juliet to the point where even just saying that is like, well, now I know exactly what. No.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, beat for beat, but generally speaking, I think if you know the general story of Romeo and Juliet, you'll have a rough idea where West Side Story goes.
And it's probably good to know that going into this movie, that it's based on a Shakespearean tragedy. It's deceiving because you go into this movie, you see the lights, you hear the pop and the dancing and everything's hitting you, and you're just like, this is the feel good movie of the year. Like, well, I just watched Belfast, I fell in love, and now I get to watch West Side Story, But then you watch this movie and like it has that, but then it's just sort of like, but what if everything dies and everybody loses everything and nothing matters? Okay, well.
Yeah, I mean, I take West Side Story as more bittersweet, I guess, but there is certainly a lot of melancholy to be seen and felt.
I just think it's bitter, but oh well, that's a conversation for a more spoilery discussion, I guess.
Yes, actually, now I think about it, it is a pretty sad tale overall.
Well, let's get into the remake. I think we made it pretty clear how we feel about the original, and
sure.
I don't want to make it sound like I don't like the original. I hope I've been clear about that. I think the original's.
I mean, I just have stronger, I guess, feelings for it, but it's not a film like I fully recognize a lot of the complaints and criticisms of it, and I don't dismiss them. I just really fall in love with it every time I watch it.
For sure. I can definitely tell. Okay, so the new West Side Story, as we've already mentioned, it's directed by Steven Spielberg, who is at a very interesting point of his career right now. He hasn't really made like a big budget movie since Ready Player One. That was like 2018. So it's been 3 years. He's done smaller things. And that's really been the beat of his career in sort of the second decade of the 2000s. Yep. Is like, he makes smaller movies most of the time. And then every once in a while, he comes in with like a big set piece movie. Yeah. And West Side Story is that movie right now. And I think like just right off the bat, it's easily his best film in quite a while, in my opinion. But what is it? It is written by Tony Kushner, and I actually didn't know Tony Kushner had adapted this.
Oh, really?
I didn't know until like I was watching the movie and I saw him in the credits. But he's collaborated with Spielberg plenty of times, Munich and Lincoln, right?
Yeah, and love Munich. Yeah,
I think he's been nominated for a screenplay Oscar, but I don't think he won.
Well, I mean, the big thing obviously is Angels in America. I think he won like a Tony
in America. Yeah, I've heard
Pulitzers for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this movie, you kind of know the gist. We mentioned Romeo and Juliet. We have New York City and in the 1950s, because one thing we actually forgot to mention, this is technically an adaptation of it's not really, I guess, a remake of the movie more than it is a new adaptation of the Broadway stage musical, which came out in, I believe, 1957. And that original musical, it's Leonard Bernstein did the music. I forget who did the book, but Stephen Sondheim did the lyrics. And Stephen Sondheim recently passed away. Yeah. And I think West Side Story was like his big break. I mean, I think that was like a kind of a big turning point in his career, like one of the first points of his career.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at least like, I think solo wise, it was probably Sunday in the Park with George was like his like, this is Stephen Sondheim, like know the name, but like, I think, in terms of like his credits, I think West Side Story was the one that was like announcing him as a Broadway sensation.
Yeah. I'm not like a super big expert on his entire like career, so I don't remember if there was anything before this that he had done lyrics or music for, possibly, but I want to say that this was like the first thing, if not the first big thing. But while that film, while that original film from 1961 starred a lot of people who, we can just say like it didn't have the strongest performances by and large, but I think like the person who really came out of that film, like with, the Oscar win, with really just like a big career boost, was Rita Moreno. Yeah. And, we kind of mentioned her earlier too. Yeah. I think she was like the only Puerto Rican in the entire movie. And she was in brownface.
Yeah. At least the only lead Puerto Rican, I think. Yeah.
There might have been background. But when I watched that movie, like, I don't know, I've never noticed anybody who they all just kind of look like they're in brownface. But
I just didn't want to assume. Sure. I'm just saying that to cover my bases. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like that in this movie. So in this movie, we have on the shark side of things, and I guess I haven't really said the plot synopsis. The plot synopsis is pretty simple. We are in the west side of New York City, 1961, or I guess this is 1957, and we have these rival gangs. And on the one side, we have the Jets, who are made up of these white children, some of them orphans of like junkies, some of them are kids of European immigrants. So this isn't long after like Ellis Island. They are, I think, like a mix of like Irish and Italian, and they are trying to reclaim some territory that has been, really brought into by the Puerto Ricans who have come from the island. This is based on real events. Puerto Ricans came to New York in big numbers in the 1950s. And there's a lot of history behind that. There's a lot of history behind why Puerto Ricans left the island, mainly the economy. And there were a lot of issues with, like, I think the Puerto Rican government at the time, and still is, very, very corrupt, and lots of issues there. So a lot of Puerto Ricans were moving to the United States, a lot of them to New York City, really to sort of, because it was easier. I think because there weren't really immigrants. Like, you're Puerto Rican, even if you're born in Puerto Rico, you're a U.S. citizen, because Puerto Rico is an incorporated territory. It's kind of like the last colony in a lot of ways. People call it like a territory, and I guess you can call it that for sure. But the gist of it is, it's like if you're Puerto Rican, you're American. But this whole musical is really about like Puerto Ricans who kind of are at war with themselves too, not just with the Jets who are trying to take their territory and mess up their neighborhoods. They're also trying to sort of say that, like, hey, you're not really American. You're not American enough. Then, there's Puerto Ricans within the group who are sort of like, well, I don't care. I don't want to be Puerto Rican, or I don't want to be American. I want to be Puerto Rican. So a lot of that going on here. So that's kind of the setting of the stage. But throughout all the turmoil that these rival gangs are having, we have two leads. We have Ansel Elgort as one of the co-founder of the Jets, but he left them behind. He was like, I don't need these guys anymore. We find out he actually went through some stuff and kind of, turned his life around, got a job, right? Just like in the original, but with even more of like a traumatic sort of inciting thing for why he's changing his ways. And he kind of comes across somebody who might change things for him, might kind of teach him, hey, maybe there's something out there for me. Love, perhaps, very possible. Sure. And he sees that, and probably not the most convenient person to fall in love with at first sight, and that is Maria, who's played here by Rachel Zegler. And Maria is, of course, Puerto Rican. She is the younger sister of the leader of the Sharks, who is Bernardo, played by David Alvarez. And she's also his girlfriend, his lover. Here is Anita, played by Ariana DeBose. So kind of filling in the Rita Moreno role. Rita Moreno plays Ansel Elgort, or Tony's boss at the drugstore, kind of doing something a bit different. Like, if you remember in the original, there was Doc, but not anymore. Yeah. Doc is out of the picture. I guess they kind of say he like passed away. Yeah, but,
I think they did. And this is his wife, right?
Yeah. So his wife, I think Valentina, I want to say, or am I getting Sopranos mixed up in that? I think it's Valentina, but she is his widow, and she runs the drugstore now. And I guess that's one of the first things we can mention. I mean, this is a musical that really changes things around. It's certainly evoking the Robbins choreography, but it's kind of doing something different with it. Yeah. It is adding a lot more setting, or a variety of setting, to all the different musical numbers and set pieces. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of shuffling things around. I want to turn it to you, but I'm going to just start it off and say, I think most of the changes they made, I actually think are for the better, starting with the fact that they cast mostly Latina actors for these roles. I mean, not all of them are Puerto Rican, very few of them. I think Ariana DeBose is the only Puerto Rican in the main cast. But you can kind of tell, like, there are Cuban folks. I think Rachel Zegler is Colombian, and it's a little bit of a bummer. I think it'd be cool to see other Puerto Rican. I never get to see Puerto Ricans in movies, but it's okay. I won't complain too badly. It's fine. I can deal with it.
I mean, it's certainly a step up from Brownface, to be sure.
Completely. Yeah. Completely. But yeah. West Side Story. Will Ashton. I want to know you were a big fan of the original, so and I have no idea what you think about this movie, so just lay it on us.
Yeah, and to be clear, I mean, I've never seen the stage production. I've only seen the original film.
Me
so
neither.
I don't want to act like I'm an expert on the original stage show, or even on the career of Stephen Sondheim. I misspoke earlier. Sunday in the Park with George was much later in his career than I initially realized. So before the commenters get upset. Yeah, I don't want to get the commenters upset. Yeah, that was the 80s.
I was going to guess 70s.
For some reason, I thought that was like 60s or 70s, but my musical theory knowledge is very limited. Let me be perfectly clear. Yeah. But as far as this film, to answer your question, I think Tony Kushner's adaptation of the book for the film is the book being like the musical book. I think there are more ideas than he can fully play with, but I think a lot of those ideas are really interesting and worthwhile. For instance, as you're alluding to, the opening of the film plays a lot more with gentrification as far as New York City. In the original film, like there's a very kind of pristine look to the settings. Like it does look like they're on a set, and this obviously is also a set as well, but you see the crumbling of the apartment buildings making way for Lincoln Center, which must have been really awkward for the premiere, which was at Lincoln Center. But I heard
about that. I know a few folks who were at that premiere, and they've reflected on the awkward sort of. There were people who apparently were cheering.
Oh, really?
When they saw the sign, and other people were like, "Why are you cheering? This is so uncomfortable."
That premiere must have been weird, right? Like I wasn't there, but like. The movie, I
have to imagine,
delayed for years. It's like, finally, the movie is here, but Steven Sondheim just died. So this is kind of a bittersweet thing. But our lead actor has been accused of a lot of heinous things. So it's kind of weird, not going to lie. Anyway, here's a movie. And then the Lincoln Center thing comes and sits. It's like, all right.
I'm glad I didn't have to be behind that podium. Let's just say that.
Yeah. But anyway. I mean, I also changed around a lot of the songs. Some of the changes I thought were really interesting. For instance, Cool.
Yeah.
Here gets a little bit more dramatic urgency than it had in the original film.
I agree. I've argued with some people about this. Some people hate that change, and I'm just like, no, it's a really good rethinking of it.
No pun intended.
It was cool.
Yeah, no pun intended. I thought that was a pretty cool change, and I thought that was very Spielbergian. Like the staging of that, the way everything about that was like, this feels pure Spielberg in terms of doing a lot, showing a lot without saying a lot. I thought that was really effective. Some of the changes I wasn't crazy about. For instance, I thought the decision to add Pretty until much later in the film was weird.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Because my thinking during this movie was like, did they take this song out? And if they do that, how do I function? Because like it's my favorite song from the entire musical. It's supposed to open up after the intermission. It's so important, but they skipped it, and I was like, what? And then the rumble happens, and I'm like, well, then it can't happen because they can't just do I Feel Pretty after the rumble.
Does she feel pretty and witty? No,
she does, and they change it. That's the thing too, because now it takes place at night. Yeah. So in that case, they have to change the lyrics because in a lot of ways they don't change that much. Because clearly they don't want to mess with the lyrics too much, which I think makes a lot of sense.
I mean, they changed gay to bright, right? I think
they changed gay to bright because she pities any girl who isn't her tonight instead of today. But here's the thing, Will Ashton. Why did they do that? They didn't have to, but I think the only thing I can think of for why they would do that is because they're like, man, what a depressing part of the movie that was. People are going to be such in bad moods. Hey, well, hold on. Mm-hmm. We could put I Feel Pretty in the middle and break up the momentum of the third act and just completely ruin the entire like mood and atmosphere that we set up. And people are like, yeah, we should do that. And we can also just, purposefully like mess with Maria and like put her in this heinous situation where she's super happy and everybody watching her is being like, oh girl, you do not know.
Yeah, I just thought it struck me as like they didn't really have any narrative reason to include it based on what they changed around. But they're like, this is like the second most famous song in the film or the musical. It's like, we can't get rid of it. Like people are expecting it. People are going to riot if they don't hear I Feel Pretty and witty, So it's like,
I rioted.
Sure.
Why take it out?
Right.
There was no, I'm remembering back to the movie and it's like, you could have just like the thing that they replace it with, I guess, is because when in the original, I remember she's in the shop and she's just like, I feel pretty because like, I want to get laid to this guy.
Sure.
Cool. and she's hanging out with her girls. And then right after that, Tony shows up. And then that's when you get into like the, one night, one whatever song.
Mm-hmm.
They do that, but it's sort of like, they just sort of like unceremoniously are like on the subway in this movie. And I'm just like, well, why are you cutting off the coolness of this whole, like there's magic to that scene. Right. I don't know. It's just like, it's like a very small portion of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So like, it's kind of amazing that it's so good that I don't like enough in it that I like, that it doesn't ruin the movie for me, that they botched I Feel Pretty.
I mean, to be clear, I wasn't expecting to spend this much time on this, but
I kind of was.
Oh, really?
I wrote in my notes, I Feel Pretty, all caps. Don't let Will make me skip this.
But no, I mean, I guess what I was trying to say before was just that I think most of the changes are for the better. I also think a lot of the ideas that they introduce here are very interesting, or at least well incorporated. I don't think everything works in terms of what they change around, but maybe that's just me being precious with the original film and being like, this works really well in the original, so why change it? But at the same time, I think it justifies its existence, and I certainly think even if I don't love every creative decision that they make, I at least understand the logic behind it, and I think emotionally it works. And that's really where I stand on it. Because with the original film, story-wise, there's a lot of things I just don't think make sense or add up. But it's like emotionally, I'm well through it throughout. Like I am fully invested in the characters. I don't feel as strongly about it with this film, but I think there's just so much to appreciate in terms of Spielberg obviously being inspired, having this grand campus, obviously feeling invigorated with the musical genre, that even if I don't love everything it's doing, I just really appreciate what it's pulling off, and just seeing it on the big screen too. It just fills the screen in a way that I feel like a lot of movies recently have not. And so for that, I'm definitely very grateful.
Yeah. I mean, the spectacle in this movie is undeniable. It's just like so beautifully done. Like watching these musical numbers and just sort of how they twist certain things. They make certain things like just feel even more alive. Like I was really, really enjoying the rendition of G Officer Krupke, for example, where in the original, you really just have those guys doing that like right outside the drugstore. It's like on the curb. And, it's still a great song, but it's not as like interesting a place. But in this movie, when they do it in the police station and, they even added like a little bit more of like characterization to a certain character, right? In order to sort of set off what happens in that scene. I still think that like, my main thing with this whole movie is that the really good stuff is really good, but then, the really good stuff that they inherit from the original, but then the really bad stuff, they also inherit from the original. The things that I just do not like, that suspend disbelief from me. And that comes in two forms. The first thing being, and I don't think that I'm saying anything controversial here, where I just think Ansel Elgort horrifically miscast. I think that this guy is too old for this like part, and it would work if Rachel Zegler did not look as young as she of course is. There's a 10-year age difference almost between them. I think it's like 6 years or something.
Well, she's an actual teenager, right? Like she
was around 18 when they filmed it,
and he's like, I'm guessing like 25 or 26. I'm guessing around this.
Ansel Elgort is 26 right now.
Okay, 26 right now. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's like 6 or 7 years older than her. Yeah, and you can just tell he's way taller. To the point where, like, in this movie, it's hard to ignore. Like, he's constantly at, like, an angle, or he's, like, slouching or doing something. It's just, like, you need to sell the romance because it is a very important romance. Yeah. And I think, like, the original, it's not that the original is that great about it either, because Natalie Wood is super awkward in that movie because she's being dubbed the whole time.
Sure.
You were going to say?
No, I agree that, like, I don't think the original leads have, like, enormous chemistry, but I buy that romance a lot more than I buy this one, even though I don't like I'm willing to suspend my disbelief and buy into the romance, but I feel it's a lot more natural for me with the original.
I think it works in the original because even though they don't have a ton of chemistry, I think that they're both being very dreamy throughout the whole thing. They're sort of like, they're so different from all the other characters. Their heads are in the clouds. So even though I never really bought that they loved each other that much, I always felt like, well, they're very similar to each other in the way that, like, I don't know, like, especially Richard Beamer, I think, was the actor who played Tony. He's so... there's something about him that's very off, and that sort of helps. He's such a, like, generic leading man in a lot of senses, but, like, he's also just very, like, like glitter is like popping out of his body, and he's just larger than life in a lot of ways, even though I think he kind of is, I don't know, he's only at like one level for most of the movie.
Sure. I think for me, this film I get like, I think they want Ansel Elgort because Tony in this version has a little bit more of an edge. Not that Ansel Elgort has like a ton of edge to him, but he seems a little bit more aggressive than the Tony in the original musical. Like in this one,
he's more of a bad boy. He's got a pass.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he spent some time in Sing Sing. Like he has a criminal record. Like he's trying to be on the straight and narrow. Whereas the original is just kind of just like, golly gee, I'm just kind of like, I'm just trying to, be good to the, good to the neighborhood.
Who needs them?
Right. Yeah,
I got
exactly.
a job.
Right,
it's
exactly.
just there's not a lot of motivation behind it.
Sure.
And that's one of the great things that this movie does. It adds more depth. I think that there's some really good scenes between him and Riff. Riff is played by Mike Faist, who is my second favorite person in this entire movie.
Yeah.
He's
John
unbelievably
Mulaney.
Good. Say again?
He looks a lot like John Mulaney.
I wasn't thinking about that. I know he played Connor in the Dear Evan Hansen musical.
Oh yeah.
I think he won a Tony for it.
Yeah.
Or nominated. Either or.
I agree that he's quite good, and I like that he's kind of like a little bit nervier than the original iterations of the character. I just feel like, it just feels like he's like kind of like you're saying before. He's like kind of more of like a kid. Like it makes the tragedy of his character punctuate a little bit more because he seems like he's like actually he's cool, he's hip, but there's also like kind of like genuine scrawniness to him. Like he's not all put together in every single way. He's still rough and tumble in a lot of ways, and I like that about this iteration.
There's a much needed charisma that he brings whenever he's talking in this movie. Whenever he's sort of like confronting somebody, my eyes are glued, and I can't say the same thing for Ansel Elgort. I don't think Elgort's even that bad in this movie. I think the issue is that everybody else is too good. And it just sort of, whenever he is interacting with other characters, I think his best scenes are with Mike Faist. I think because their energies complement each other kind of well, because he's more aloof, he's more stoic. And Mike Faist is a little bit more of like, Tony, we got this going on and you don't understand, Daddy-O. And he's just sort of like, Riff, I don't think that, like there is like a sort of, there's a Cobb and Cooper,
sure. I'm sure that was the direction that Spielberg gave him on set. I thought Elgort was also generally pretty good with Rita Moreno. I thought they had decent chemistry together.
They had more than he does with Zegler, and that's the thing. I think that Zegler, when it's Zegler and DeBose and Alvarez, when they're kind of hanging out, there's more depth to that character of her feeling like her older brother treats her like a kid. Their parents, I don't think their parents are dead, but they're they're not in the picture for whatever reason, and they're just kind of living together and like scraping by, and the issue is that like when you bring the romance in, the romance causes all of these problems, and you really got to sell that the romance is worth the risk. That just does not happen in this movie. When you have Tony singing Maria, Maria, and when you have him like climbing and being like tonight, it just I couldn't do it. I just didn't buy it.
Yeah,
I didn't hate it because the music's so good that I'm like, well, I do like the song.
Well, it's also that, and it's, I think, the lead performance here from Rachel Zegler, who is just, I think, as good as people have been saying she is. Obviously a first-time performer, just really brings that naivety.
YouTuber.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
But this is like her first major film, right? Or maybe even her
and
first film.
It is, and she's gonna be doing the Disney live action remake of Snow White next.
Okay. But yeah, there's like, a genuine naivete and sweetness and raw vulnerability to this character and how she portrays it that I think is really emotionally rewarding. And I think that especially towards the end, when we get her final few moments, Maria's final few moments, I think that really hits home the emotional sincerity of the film. And I think that's probably the main reason why I ultimately think this movie works as well as it does.
I think I agree with you. One of my favorite performances here, though, by far, is Ariana DeBose. Similar to Mike Faist. Whenever she's on screen, whenever she is just acting, she's making magic. She gets, of course, the America showpiece. And America, my second favorite song in this entire musical, because it is amazing. And it's probably the best remix in terms of lyrics for this show. For this movie, because they take certain things out of the original song that I always found a little bit icky, you know, like this sort of attitude of like, not that it was anti-Puerto Rican, but it was just kind of, I don't know, it was just something I never really resonated with in terms of like the drama between Puerto Ricans who leave the island and Puerto Ricans who stay. And I think this version of the song kind of like, it's subtle. It's not like major changes all the way around, but it's definitely my favorite number in terms of like everything they do with it, the bombastic quality to it, and how many side dancers they have, what they do with like the entire street. I mean, it's so hard to not smile during that entire sequence. It's so wonderful. And you know, that kind of speaks to, I think, what really works about this musical. One of the reasons that I think that despite all the problems I have with it, I come out of it kind of recommending it and saying that it's really like living up to the legacy of the original is because these music numbers and set pieces are really like, they each have something different to offer. It's not just the same thing over and over again. Like every single one is different and interesting in its own unique way. So when you watch the movie, it's just like you're going from excellent and, you know, emotionally gripping set piece to another. I don't know if you would agree with that. I don't think there was a weak set piece in the bunch unless I'm forgetting one.
No, in terms of set pieces, I think everything here is really strong.
Yeah, in terms of music, there are scenes for sure where I'm just like, in fact, you know what? There is one involving music, and I do think it is when they're in the church, when they're doing the one song, one night thing.
Oh, really? Okay.
I thought it was terrible.
Why is that?
I was just like, move on. I just, it was awkward. It was weird. The dialogue, there was just something really off about it. I think the thing is that like, it's hard for me in this case to separate the art from the artist, because we know that Ansel Elgort's this guy who's been accused of assaulting a minor,
right?
Sexually assaulting a minor.
Yeah.
And it's just really weird seeing him like have this sort of like overnight romance with somebody who looks a decade younger than him. And like, I get it's not going to be an issue for everybody, but for me, like, I couldn't get it out of my head.
Sure. No, I had a similar problem with that. I don't think that scene bothered me as much as it bothered you, but I agree that in the original, there's something about, you know, like they have the mannequins and it's a little bit more playful, and then it leads to the kind of more dramatic epiphany of that moment. And this one, it's a little bit
so much
plainer.
Better in my opinion.
Yeah, this one, it's a little less inspired, I think, compared to both the original film and also the other set pieces in the film. But there is something about its stripped down quality that I think is affecting. So I ultimately like the scene, but I can get your complaints.
I mean, I'll just say one. I mean, you kind of touched on it, so I do want to say like that whole scene is so sneaky important to the romance. The scene you're talking about where they're playing with the mannequins, because it's like the only time where these characters are just sort of hanging out and having a good time and having fun. And it's not young. Like, it's not melodramatic, and they're not like dwelling too much on like the whole, like, we can't be together. Mm-hmm. Instead, they're like having fun together. And that's what makes the movie all the more tragic. Like in the original, I mean, and this one, it's like, every conversation they have is a bummer. Every single, like, what moments do they really have together that really, like, when they're on the subway, I was waiting for that. I was like, okay, they're on a subway. Like, are they going to have fun? Are they going to people watch? Are they going to goof? They don't do it. They don't joke around. They don't even seem to like to be around each other. They're scowling the whole time. And I'm like, well, why are we doing this? And I don't know. I was very frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, my bigger issue is just that I was hoping with the remake that we get more of Maria's inner life, and I felt like the movie wasn't diving into that as much as I think I was hoping it would.
Agreed,
I felt like her character is still kind of shallow in this version, unfortunately, even though I think Rachel Zegler does a lot with the character to bring out that inner life to Maria. I just felt it's still, unfortunately, a fairly underwritten character, and I was hoping the remake would actually spend more time doing more to make her more than just like a kind of doe-eyed, you know, young naivety who's just trying to like find peace and all that with her newfound love and all that. But yeah, that was one of the more bigger disappointments for me with this film.
The writing was there for Tony, though. That's the weird thing, because like,
right.
It does it better than in the original in the sense of like, why does Tony want love? Well, in this movie, they do a better job of explaining it. It's like he wants a shot at redemption. He wants to be loved because he feels like he's not worth loving. And there is like a very
American
emotionally,
dream.
It's an emotionally important conflict for him.
Yeah, it's that American dream thing where he's like a second chapter, a new legacy for him, and yeah, that's what makes the narrative all the more tragic. And I get it.
For Maria, it is like you're saying, a bit more shallow. It's a little bit more one-dimensional in the sense of like she feels like she's being treated like a kid by Bernardo, and she's just sort of like she wants love because to me it comes across like she wants to grow up a little bit too fast, which can be the start to a very surprising and interesting hook for the character. But yeah, it just doesn't really go anywhere beyond that. And that is partly worsened by the fact that I Feel Pretty comes so late in the film. That is a scene that really shows us who is this person?
Right.
How does she tick? How does she interact with other people besides her brother and Anita? We just don't really get that until like all of a sudden we find out, oh yeah, she has a cleaning job. And then all these characters we don't know are hanging out with her. And it's sort of like, well, yeah.
Also, that scene, I feel like in this one kind of breaks away from the tension that's being built in the scene before and after. So,
absolutely.
Yeah,
it cuts off the momentum.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so it's just, I don't know, it's just a weird placement for that song in this movie. I'm sorry we keep harping on that, but it's
true though, because like, it's annoying because like the scene itself is great. Like I like what they do. It's more interesting than like what they do with like the clothes and everything in the other one.
Sure.
I mean, it's not a lot more interesting, but it's just doing something different, but not doing it different for the sake of being different. Doing it in a way that is even more imaginative and really capturing the soul of the original.
Yeah, it's fun. I think both versions are fun. I guess I was less taken by it than you were, but I think it's a pretty good scene overall. But yeah, the placement of it, I think, is where I take more issue with it. I
feel bad because I feel like I've been complaining a lot. And
I was gonna say I like this movie.
I like this movie a lot.
Yeah, I like it a good bit. I don't love it, but I really do like it.
I really like it too. I love it in some ways. I love some of the things it does. There is a version of La Borinqueña that they do in this. And for people who don't know, this is something that I didn't know too much about. I actually talked about it with my mother because we were talking about this movie. She hasn't seen it yet, but I was like, oh yeah, like the Puerto Rican anthem, they do a version of it in the movie. And she was like, oh, well, tell me what the lyrics are. Because like she was telling me that like my siblings, they were born on the island. I wasn't. I was born not long after my parents left the island and moved to the States. And in Puerto Rico, like when my siblings were growing up in school, like they had to like learn the Puerto Rican anthem, and it's La Borinqueña, like a version of it. But what they sing in this movie, like what the Sharks are singing a cappella, which gave me chills because I haven't heard La Borinqueña in so long. But this is a version of that anthem that is actually like, I don't want to say it's illegal to sing that song in Puerto Rico because I haven't been in Puerto Rico in a while, and I don't know the specifics of like what happens, but it's one of those things that you're not allowed to do. Like people just don't do it. It is a very specific and polarizing and controversial song when done that way, and they do it in this movie. And there are some touches like that where I'm just like, it's so nice to see like Puerto Rican culture in a movie. It was a thing in the Heights that we didn't really get much of, and I didn't complain because we got so much of other stuff. And it really, I think In the Heights was more about how it's more of like the melting of all these cultures together that does feel a little bit more true to life. This idea of like just a Puerto Rican only sort of barrio in New York. I don't know how true that was at the time. I guess it was pretty, I really don't know. I don't know if it was like always kind of like that in terms of like it being very siloed, but even just the act of like seeing the Puerto Rican flag everywhere, it's like Puerto Ricans, like we feel invisible most of the time. We feel like people just don't acknowledge we exist. And, this movie even has stuff in it with Rita Moreno where she's talking about how, she's a lighter skinned Puerto Rican. Like I can relate. Like if it's not the summer and I haven't been tanning, like I look like, I look pretty white, and it's fine, but it's one of those things where like other Puerto Ricans, like even in my own family, like my siblings have darker skin than me, the ones that were born on the island. And like, there's always been this sort of like, John, you're adopted, you know what I mean? Like, playful like teasing and stuff like that, because, there are lighter skinned Puerto Ricans, there are darker skinned Puerto Ricans who get mistreated and, certainly don't get like the same privileges that I do. And it's all just messed up. And the fact that the movie touches on it is really cool. It doesn't do a ton. Like, it's not like this movie's about something in a very deep way. Like, I don't think this is a movie people are going to watch and be like, wow, you know, but I do think it's a movie that people are going to watch and they're going to be like, yeah, Puerto Rico's cool. I'm going to learn more about Puerto Rico. I wish people would. There's so many things people don't understand about our island and about our like quasi country, and just like the influences and the stuff that, like, you know, the history of it is fascinating. And the problems that Puerto Ricans on the island are dealing with today are just immense. And it's constant like depression and economic issues. And, you know, the federal government screwing those people over all the time. And it's unbelievable. And so, yeah, even small gestures like this, I really take a lot of, and not enjoyment, but appreciation and admiration that they really put in an effort. I don't think it's perfect. And I think there's a lot of Puerto Rican representation issues I have in this movie. I would actually recommend Kristen Maldonado and Film Poser, or Josie from Film Poser, who did a wonderful video about this on YouTube, just kind of diving into really like the nitty gritty of like some of the things the movie does that isn't like super great about Puerto Rican representation, which I certainly am like, yeah, that's true. Especially if like you're a New York Puerto Rican, which I'm not. That's worth seeking out. But for me, on like the very basic level, I think this thing, you know, it warmed my heart, I guess I should say. Sorry about the long rant about Puerto Rican stuff.
No, that's good. Good stuff, I think. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot more to say about the film. I think it's a worthwhile remake. I think its biggest problem is that it just has to compete with what I think is one of the best movie musicals ever made. But at the same time, I think it does a lot of good stuff and a lot of things that I am happy to see on the big screen again. And, you know, I don't know if this is going to be the one and only movie musical from Steven Spielberg, but it just feels very natural for him to be in this genre, and I hope he makes another film within it if he can. I'm actually really interested in his next film. I don't know if it has the title yet, but it's going to be a semi-autobiographical film about his father, I think, who gets the tribute in this film, or for whatever you call it, the you know,
dedication?
It's dedication, yeah, the dedication at the end. And I think Seth Rogen's playing his father in that film, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know, that to me is very interesting. And like you said, it's a lot smaller. It's a little bit more character focused. And I also think that the sentimentality that he incorporates in a lot of his recent films feels a lot more natural and earnest, I think, in this film, as opposed to, you know, a film I already like, but a film that I don't reflect on as much, like The Post. I think, you know, that sentimentality kind of gets a little mawkish, and I don't think that's the case here. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're downplaying how much we like it, but there's a lot of stuff in it that's worth criticizing. And I think, you know, it's fair. And I think that stuff is frustrating because it's like, if these things were better, this would probably be an outright great film, in my opinion. I think it would probably
be one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's close to it, though. I really do enjoy this film quite a lot. I'm really glad I saw it in theaters. I saw it in Dolby. And I think, you know, seeing the American musical number in Dolby was just, you know, one of my highlights for the year in terms of being at the movie theater. I think, yeah. I don't know how you saw the film, but that was
throughout the entire thing.
Yeah,
I mean, chills, all of that.
Right. And that's why it's depressing that it's not doing that well in theaters. At the same time, I can understand why people don't feel comfortable going to the movies, but it's like, if you're going to see this thing, you should see it in theaters. I mean, if you can, it's going to be probably on its way out, given everything that's coming in the theaters pretty soon. But if you can see it in theaters, please do so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some people like, I've seen some people, critics, be like, I guess it's competently made. I'm just like, are you kidding me? You guess it's fine in terms of how it's made? Like, it is. I mean, like, they pulled something off like really incredible here, and I think some people are downplaying it, and it's like annoying to me. Like,
I mean,
let's not pretend like this isn't really good filmmaking, despite what you might think of like other aspects.
I mean, we haven't even talked about the cinematography in this film, which is just outstanding. I mean, it's
it's hard to describe.
Hard to describe?
Yeah, it's hard to describe. Like, for me, it is. Like, we can mention things of like some of the signature Spielberg touches, but like there are things that happen in this movie that, like, yes, I'm like, that's a very Spielberg thing. Person's walking into the close up and all that, you know, foreground, background, playing around. But like, there are some things that this movie does with like angles and camera movement where I was just like, how did he do that? I mean, and why does it work so well?
There's a shot in this movie that's just a guy standing in the puddle, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've seen on the big screen in the past few years.
I was just like, you don't even have to do that. It doesn't, but it's so wonderful. Like, it just makes you feel good to see that. And it's not even important really, but it's great.
yeah, but Spielberg's regular cinematographer. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce his name right. Janek Kamaski. It's Polish, but I don't quite know if I'm pronouncing it right. But
I pronounce it Janusz Kaminski.
I'm sure it's way closer than whatever I said. But yeah, the guy
we'll find out someday.
Yeah, the guy won like an Oscar for like Saving Private Ryan. I think he also shot like Schindler's List and a few other Spielberg movies. Very famous films. He's done such great work throughout his career. I'm not going to say this is like his best work or anything, but it's
his best work's probably Schindler's List, in my opinion.
Probably, yeah. But like, yeah, it's just, he's a legendary cinematographer for a reason. I think, this movie looks gorgeous throughout, and I just want to make sure I talked about that at least once.
Totally agree. And I looked it up because I wasn't sure. The movie you were talking about is called The Fabelmans. And like you mentioned, Seth Rogen is in it, but also Michelle Williams and Paul Dano.
Yeah.
And Oak
Why
Steadley.
Not? I feel like Paul Dano is, it's like, if there's a coming of age movie, he just like the Kool-Aid Man just like kind of comes running in. He's just like, I'm here. What do you need me to do?
It's like, Zoe doesn't know I'm here. Please don't call her. I'm just kidding. I'm sure they have a lovely relationship these days. Anyway,
I got 5 minutes before I have to be the Riddler and Batman. Tell me what to do.
Oh, I forgot he was doing that. Now, oh yeah, I was going to say one last thing for me. My biggest problem, because you mentioned your biggest problem with the film. My biggest problem is that it keeps in two things from the original that it should have either changed or just removed from the movie. And this is a light spoiler warning. Okay,
you're talking about what I think you're talking about?
We'll see. So if you don't want to know what I'm about to say, but you still want to hear us play our game and everything, fast forward 30 seconds.
Sure.
But okay.
The hanky-panky?
She sleeps with the man who killed her brother the night her brother dies. And like, how do people think that? Just change it. Right. Just change it. Why did we have to do it again? Why can't they? Well, because Anita sings, you can't get rid of the line where it's like, he killed your brother, your lover. You could get rid of it.
I mean,
change it.
If I had a checklist for things, I was like, if they're going to make a remake, they're obviously going to change X, Y, Z. Right. On the top of that list, I'd be like, well, they're probably going to get rid of the scene where they sleep together after he kills Bernardo. It's like that seems kind of weird.
So he doesn't kill Bernardo, right?
Well, I think
he doesn't have to kill Bernardo.
Right. I was thinking that too. I was like, are they just going to have it so that Bernardo is killed during the knife fight, and it's like it wasn't actually Tony that did it? And it's like, okay, that would be interesting.
Or make it ambiguous, or do something like, sure. Or, if there had been like a tussle or something, and like Tony had been in the mess, but he's not sure, and it had been like, I don't think I did. You know what I mean? Like instead, it's very deliberate. He comes after him anyway. I'm past the 30 seconds.
No, I get you.
Forward.
No, I get you. But it's like, what big change are we gonna make? Well, we're gonna make Bernardo more sympathetic. It's like, well, that's fine, but that makes the decision even more baffling because it's like it's weirder that she forgives him so quickly. It's just like whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Because he in the original, he's a bit prickly. Like you don't really like. I was sad because I'm just like, hey, don't kill that white boy in brown face. But in this movie, it's just sort of like, I like him. And I like Riff, and I'm just like, I don't know. You can't make me like these characters this much. Yeah. And if you're gonna do that, I don't know. You gotta do something to just really earn it. But then also the other thing is, and fast forward another 30 seconds.
Sure. Sorry, everybody.
Rita Moreno, they keep in the rape, and it's just like, I mean, it's not like a rape that I think consummates, but
the rape attempt. Yeah.
They try to do this whole thing where like, or sorry, I said Rita Moreno, I meant Anita. Played by Ariana DeBose.
I knew what you meant. Yeah.
You don't need it. And then they have Rita Moreno coming in, and she's just like, don't do that. And I'm just like, what? Movie.
Yeah. I mean, the only real change that they make it more explicit, I guess, which is
which nobody wanted. So I don't know why we.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's baffling to me.
I don't know. I don't know what position's the best for that. Like taking it out seems kind of careless, but leaving it in also seems kind of cold. I don't know. It's a weird decision to make. Yeah, I don't know.
There are ways to, I don't know. It's just a bit too traumatizing for the whole, I don't know. I feel like some people would disagree, but I definitely can't abide by all of that. But okay, that's West Side Story. It is now playing in theaters. it's not doing well box office wise. It only made $17 million so far, and that's like not after the opening weekend. That's counting the last few days.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think this is gonna get some legs? I could see it going either way, honestly.
Sure. I mean, well, here's the thing. I've been looking at the numbers. Some people have been saying, well, Greatest Showman was a musical that came out in around the holidays, and it ended up being one of the leggiest movies of all time, because that's a movie that had like a low opening weekend as well.
Right. But that's like,
it grossed a ton.
That's a movie where it's like, I mean, I don't like Greatest Showman, but I can get like, there's never been a Greatest Showman before. There's never been a movie, a musical, what have you, with those songs in it and that, story or whatever. So it's
there's something more new and original about it. Whereas West Side Story, I just don't think has that same lasting power. Right. I think that its only chance is the Oscar buzz, which it has. I mean, it got nominated a bunch for some CCA things, and I think Hollywood critics gave it some love. And I mean, the reviews have been positive. We'll play our game in a moment. Sure. But I don't know. I don't know if audiences care. They don't care about musicals in general right now. Well, the most popular musicals of the last few years have all been original musicals, like La La Land and this one, like not really Greatest Showman, not really like remakes, not really like adaptations. Like Tick Tick Boom, went straight to Netflix, so that doesn't really count. But In the Heights did not make a lot of money, and I mean, Dear Evan Hansen, like people forget that even came out this year. I
mean, that big box office draw of Annette for sure.
Hey, we can say that one punched above its weight.
Sure, I really like Annette, but fine. Yes. But I think that was the biggest fault of the advertising, I think, because they were going into it being like, hey, remember this great musical? See it again. Remember these classic moments? And I think it should have been the opposite, being like, here's why we made a remake, like justifying the things that they add to it and being like, okay, that's new. I can understand why I need to see this in theaters. They try to do that,
though. They try to hype up a little bit more of like, now with real Puerto Ricans.
Yeah, I mean,
not really.
I'm talking more like the trailer, I guess, but I get what you mean. Yeah.
I did see the trailer after the movie, and good trailer. Like, I don't think it's a bad trailer. It got me hyped for a movie I'd already watched.
Yeah, I mean, I think the trailer is just like, see the story you love, but with the Spielbergian touch, and I think that's effective.
The magic.
But also, I mean, it's I'm hoping that they were like, well, we're trying to appeal to a younger audience, but more realistically, I think they're like, we're appealing to an older audience who, frankly, just don't feel comfortable going to the movies right now. But
I mean, after this and after Cats, I think we kind of just have to accept that these like famous Broadway play musicals they just don't really do it. I mean, sometimes the summer ones do okay, like the Mamma Mias of the world. But
I mean, In the Heights didn't do that great either. It's that justifies.
That's what I'm saying. I think In the Heights, I think it did better. Its opening weekend. Let me look it up.
I think it did about the same. I think.
Let's find out. You're right. It made around 11.5. Wow. In the Heights only made $22.5 million.
Yikes. That's
wait. That might just be an old article. I could be totally wrong. Let me fact check that. Hold on.
I've been really bad about keeping up with box office stuff this year, I'll be honest.
Me too. Well, because to me it's been a little bit more relevant than usual. Sorry, it made 43 million worldwide. Only grossed.
Jeez, that's worse.
It only grossed 29 million domestically.
Only 43 million worldwide? That's awful.
That's horrifically bad.
Yeah, that's worse than I thought. I thought it made like 60 something at least. That's 43. Wow.
Yeah, which is just sad. You hate to see it. I mean, the context too. I mean, I think some people blame the pandemic. I don't really think the pandemic had much to do with it. We had movies like Free Guy and even Space Jam to some extent. Like we had movies coming out in the summer. Shang-Chi came out in August, and those movies made a lot. So I just think genuinely people just don't want to watch musicals in movie theaters right now. I think people want to watch musicals, but like on Netflix, like Tick Tick Boom and Vivo.
Right. I think, I don't know. I mean, some movies that did the day-to-day thing did okay or did pretty well, like Godzilla versus Kong, but I don't know.
We should mention In the Heights was on HBO Max same day. Yeah.
I mean, I'm guessing that's part of the reason why it flopped, but I also heard it didn't do that great on HBO Max. So I think
it didn't.
I don't,
well, that's the thing. I think it's more about tastes. I don't think it's because people were like, well, I'd like to watch it at home, because people weren't like that with a lot of other movies around this time.
Right.
Especially because In the Heights, that came out like around what, like A Quiet Place, F9. Those movies did big because people were like, I want to go back to a theater and I want to see something in a theater. It's just they didn't want to see this movie in a theater. And I don't think it's like a racism thing. I don't think it's sort of like, well,
no, I don't think so.
I don't want to see a movie about non-white people. I think a lot of it was because people were like, I don't care about musicals. Sorry.
Yeah, I love musicals and I wish a lot of them did better, but this was not the year of the musical, and they sure did try to make it, but it just wasn't.
The year of musical attempts. That's for sure.
Sure. And I mean, at least half the movies were pretty good, at least. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, Dear Evan Hansen was probably the weakest of them, but like Encanto, not a live action musical, but certainly a musical with like really good songs.
Yeah.
So, and Tick Tick Boom did pretty well, like streaming. It's just, I think there was this calculation, I think, made by some people that, how to market these. I don't think it was like all planned, like to like come out with musicals sort of in this like weird, like pandemic still happening, but it's not as like oppressively like people aren't stuck in their houses all the time because of the vaccine, right?
Right.
So there is this sort of feeling like, well, people want to escape. They want a musical because it's going to make them feel better about life.
Right.
I just don't think that's really it, though. I don't think people want that.
I don't know. We'll have to analyze that.
Hawkeye.
I guess. I haven't watched Hawkeye, but...
they want Hawkeye, they want Wanda, they want Loki, and they want Spidey.
Yeah, I mean, Spider-Man's supposed to do really, really well. I mean, it's still too early to say, of course, at the moment.
Well, the ticket sales outpaced Avengers Endgame, the highest grossing film of all time. So there are people expecting it to have a pretty big weekend, if not a bit front-loaded. So who is to say?
Yeah, who can say?
Who's to say? Good movie. We'll be talking about that on the show later.
I have no opinion. I have not seen it yet.
You can have an opinion. It just could be like an opinion based without any evidence or insight.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not really excited for it. I like Spider-Man, but I'm not excited, but we'll see.
You sounded excited, less about seeing the movie, but more about like who you're seeing it with.
That's true. Yes. I'm going to be seeing it with some family and friends. I'm like, I'm excited to see them. I'm excited to go to the movies with everybody. That's exciting to me.
That's the way to do it.
I'm excited to see my family,
the whole crew.
Like Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe. Yeah.
My best friend, Ned. Okay, let's play our game. Rotten Tomatoes scores. What do you think West Side Story has? 264 critics have logged review. I'm one of them. I got my West Side Story review in.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we have a writer from the Young Folks who their review got counted as well. Pedro.
Did he like it?
Pedro liked it a lot. I think he gave it an 8 out of 10.
That's good.
Yeah. I graded it a B+.
Sure.
I was waffling. I was like, is this a B? No, I got to give it the B+ because I'm still listening to the music.
You transfer that's for your review.
For my review, for my written review.
I thought you were saying his review you turned into a B+ on Rotten Tomatoes. Okay.
That is disgusting. People who do that.
No, I thought you meant like you were transferring the numbers into grades. I didn't know if that was
thought you were saying like I changed it.
Oh, no.
Not high enough. I feel like an 8 out of 10 is a B+.
I was going to say, I thought you could do number scores, but I didn't know if like they had to be letters on Rotten Tomatoes.
Sure. Yeah. It's all, who cares? It's all relative. But anyway, 264 reviews counted. What do you think the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes is for West Side Story?
I probably saw it at some point, but I don't remember it. My gut says 92%.
Wow, so close. Just barely missed it. But do you think you're off by one? Do you think it's 93 or 91?
I'm probably up one more. It's probably 92 or 91%.
93%.
Oh, it was the opposite.
I tried to give you the second chance. I was like, you'll get that one.
Oh well.
That's fine. But no, 93%, unbelievably good. Especially considering a lot of people, myself included, were kind of dismissing this one, being like, I don't know. Spielberg hasn't really made a really great movie like at this, big scale in so long.
You were dismissing it in this review.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's like, even after you like raved about it. So yeah, 93% audience score. We have 1,000+ verified ratings. I think that's how many people actually watched it total.
Yeah.
What do you think the audience score is?
I'm gonna guess pretty high. I'm gonna say 96%.
You're one off once again.
Okay.
But do you think you're one off higher or lower?
Well, last time I was wrong, I went too low. So this time I might go too high and say 97%.
You missed it again.
Ah, jeez. Can't win.
95%. I appreciate the logic. The logic is sound. You just want to stick with your guns, you know? Okay, last is cinema score. This one, I feel like I'm looking at it now. I think I would have guessed this, but what do you think?
A?
It's an A.
Yeah.
I think that, but here's the thing. I think it's an A plus if you don't have the downer ending. Honestly.
Do they? I thought they only go up to A. Do they do A plus?
They do A plus.
Oh,
it's
really?
an A plus to F scale.
I thought it was like the Entertainment Weekly scale where it's like A is an A plus.
Nope. In fact, I will look it up. Movies that have gotten an A plus cinema score. I don't think there are that many.
Because you can't get like an F plus.
So E.T. did. Rocky 3. That's surprising.
Rocky 3. Okay. I love Rocky 3, but man, I would not give that an A plus.
Princess Bride.
Sure.
The first Die Hard.
Sure.
Dead Poets Society. Ooh. Driving Miss Daisy.
I've never seen it, actually.
You hate to see it. I don't see any modern films on here. I'd probably have to scroll quite a bit. I'm seeing like When Harry Met Sally, Dances with Wolves, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin. I
was nervous there was going to be like Green Book or something on this list.
Hey, Schindler's List.
Schindler's List got an A plus?
Yeah.
I mean,
Titanic. That makes sense.
I mean,
lots of Disney stuff here, but I'm not seeing new stuff. Toy Story 2. That's the newest I've seen so far. Monsters Inc.
I mean, Schindler's List. Well acclaimed, obviously, but I kind of figured that would get just a straight A, just because it's kind of a downer.
The second Harry Potter movie.
That's the worst one.
It got an A plus cinema score.
That's the worst Harry Potter
Nemo,
movie.
Lord of the Rings, Passion of the Christ. Wow.
Well, I mean, it's I'm assuming that audience is in the bag for it, so that makes sense.
Okay, so I just realized it's not a ranked list. It's literally like it was going in terms of like it started with ET because that was the first one. That makes more sense because these are getting more and more recent. Okay, so the last film to get an A plus cinema score was Ford v Ferrari.
Oh wow, okay.
There were a few in 2019: Avengers Endgame and Harriet. Endgame, wow. I'm not surprised, but Harriet?
Yeah, Harriet wasn't even that good of a film.
I was alright. I was barely. Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse. Incredibles 2.
Sure. Okay. I mean, I really like Incredibles 2. I don't know if I give it an A plus.
I got bad news.
Is Green Book on this list?
It's Green Book.
I was nervous about that one.
Your nervousness was
warranted, yeah.
Very warranted. I'm seeing I can only imagine 30 Metascore, because it's even showing me the Metascore for it. What a discrepancy. Man,
I don't know. I mean, look,
it makes sense when you think about it, though. It's the audience that comes out for some of these films. I'm seeing Diary of a Mad Black Woman. It's there's a fan base that's showing up opening day and doing the cinema score thing.
If you had the opportunity, would you go to one of these screenings just to kind of experience it?
I would. I'd
be curious. I just kind of want to know what the room is like. That's more than anything. I'm not trying to get a free movie. I just want to know, what's a room like when one of these screenings happens? Is it palpable, or is it kind of one of those things where you're like, all right, no one's really responding, and then you just A plus, A plus, A plus, A plus, and it's just wow, I don't know, man. I guess that's everyone was feeling
an A plus movie.
Yeah.
Well, we've been planning that Vegas trip for years.
Are we? Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, we've been putting it together.
Just avoid the casinos. Avoid the I just heard Ushers in Vegas now, I guess, for the week of Christmas. Just avoid that. Just go to these crazy kooks at the cinema score and see what goes on there.
We don't use that word in here. It's a borrowed line from the Matrix Resurrections.
Okay. Which word did I use? I apologize if I
crazy kooks, 2 words.
Okay. Are those 2 words out of fashion?
I don't know.
Okay.
You think I'm a fashion expert, Will Ashton?
I don't know. I don't mean to offend. I thought I was being pretty
I don't think you've ever offended me in my life.
Oh, really? I'm sure I've offended you at some point.
I don't know. Even your worst film takes, I've been I gotta respect that, though.
Yeah, I'm. At least these days, I'm pretty mild mannered. Maybe when I was younger, you'd be offended by some of my.
I don't know if I could have handled Will Ashton during the rebellious phase.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's it for our show this week. Thanks for listening. We'll be back to talk about all kinds of other stuff. We're hoping to talk about Nightmare Alley soon, Swan Song, Spider-Man No Way Home, of course. Lots of stuff we still haven't gotten to. Being the Ricardos.
Yeah.
It never ends. And
Matrix.
in a good way.
Are we covering Sing 2?
I mean, I saw it. So
sure.
I'm not going to tell you what to do.
I'm
not going to be like, you got to go. But it's got it. I shouldn't say this, but I think it's getting better reviews than Kingsman.
Really? I like the first Sing. I mean,
I didn't.
Sure.
I actually did. I got to say, I think I like the sequel better than the first one.
I think I like Sing more than Kingsman 2.
Definitely not for me. I mean, I remember I liked Kingsman 2 a lot more than you did, but I'm trying to remember if but see, that's the thing. The first Kingsman, it's so good. I just don't think they never really came back with something about the same. I like Kingsman 2, but it's certainly not aged as well. But all right, that's it though for this week's episode of the show. We'll be back. Don't forget to subscribe to all our stuff. You want to subscribe to all of our stuff, and we'll see you next time. From the Internet California, I'm John Negroni.
And from the Internet Pennsylvania, I'm Washington.
See ya.